In this video, we're going to be making an XKCD website. Of course, it's going to be responsive. And to start off, what we should do is look at what we're trying to clone as close as we can. Now, if you're a fan like me, XKCD is awesome. It's been around forever. I actually had a friend meet this guy. And you can see it's a basic website. You know, not a ton is going on here. And there are some things in this website that I do change, but we'll cover them when you get to it. And I will provide the source code. So if you want to change things back, play with it, you're more than welcome to. So our goal is to recreate this, but since we're always going to be starting things off on mobile, if we squeeze this into a mobile setting, we see it's not as responsive as it can be. So we're going to toy with some stuff and change some things around. So what you see right here is, let me actually bring that back out again. This right here, I'm going to put it off screen and bring it in as needed. And we're going to start on mobile and work our way out. So let's get to coding. We have our project right here. And what I've done is actually gone to the website itself, and things that were pictures, I just saved. So I have stuff like this. And if you want to follow along, just pull down my project and just rip these, photos out, and you should be good to go. When I did this originally, this is the comic that was out there. But if you want to use a different comic, I think they should roughly be all the same dimension. So just go for that. And I have, all the other pictures right there too. And I have an index, HTML, JavaScript, and a style.css file. So the first thing I did up here is I wrote down the XKCD title website here. I have my live server going. You don't need a live server. You could just open this file in a browser and hit reset every time you have new changes going, and that'll be fine. I just like a live server because it has a hot reload, and the one I use, I think, is just called live server. Yeah, this thing right here by Ritwick Day. So I'm going to close that off because I really only need these 3 files. And when I use an image, you at least know where they're from. So first things first, what I want to do is I want to make the header, the top of the page. And we look back over here when we go to inspect, because it's important to learn how to use your tools, right? We have this right here. And when I was doing the responsive stuff a few seconds ago, it squished a little bit. So the dev tools aren't always a perfect reflection of what you may get, but we could see there's definite improvements that could be made, right? This is not a mobile friendly website. But what I want to do is rip this menu out and make it its own drop down. And it's going to be a lo-fi drop down. If you want to come in, like I said, later, add some things, update some things, go ahead. This is just a very simple type of tutorial here. And then everything else I'm going to give more size and shape to when it comes to the text, images, stuff like that. So I'm going to come back into here and let me go ahead and start making the header right here. And so we're gonna kind of have to make 2 headers, right? One for the mobile and one for, well, everything else. So we got that header right here. And then what we're going to want to have is some kind of burger menu, the 3 dashed lines kind of icon. And how and where do we get that from? Well, what we could do is, and I'm going to copy this from off the screen, we could come in and use Cloudflare and Font Awesome to go ahead and do that. And what I'm also going to do while we're here, because I always forget this, is link to our style, our style file right up over here. And so now that I have that, what I want to do next is create a div for our menu icons. That way I could wrap the icon, and then I could from there go and, drop the icon in there. So that way I can have the CSS ability to change the icon, but then I have its wrapper, the outside div, to, move it around as I want. So I'm going to do div.menu-icon. And I'm using Emmet. It's like EMMET. It's built into Visual Studio Code. And it's just, you could do shorthand coding. So If you don't have that down, don't care. Just play the video, pause it, replicate, whatever it is you do. So the next thing I want to do is put in my font, or my icon, I should say. So I have this right here, class, and it looks kind of funny, and it gives it to you on their website. But we're going to do FA bars, and then burger menu. I can even spell it. And then I'm going to put an ID on here for a specific reason. And we'll see that later as stuff unfolds. And if I forget, then I'm sorry I lied to you. We're going to give this an ID, burger menu. And then we're just going to have that sit there. So now this is going to be our little icon here. And so the next thing we want to do is have another div. And this is going to be called, let's just call it menu hide. So we have this, and let's give this an ID of menu. And this is going to be kind of our thing we just make appear, our menu in the mobile format. And then what I'm going to do is actually copy these from off screen. And these aren't going to be the links on the inside because it's not a full-blown website replica clone. This is kind of a mix between what you see and kind of a soft mock-up too. I'm going to paste these in here now. And if I bring this on over, we see that we in fact have this, you know, our 3-dashed line thing here. It does nothing when we click on it. We have our archive, what if, we have blag, which I think his says blag, probably goofy talk for blog, and all this stuff. And we're going to turn this into the menu momentarily. So let's go ahead and look at this, and I'm happy with it so far. But let's go ahead and kind of think about what we want to have happen next. And so what we're going to want to do is come in here, and I want to flesh out the rest of what the header section, the top, may look like. So I'm going to keep going just a little bit here, and I'm going to have div.title. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to have an image. We're going to have a source. And then we're going to do, let's see this, image. And then for this one, we're going to use the header image. And then the alt is going to be the XKCD logo. So we got that right there in our title. And then below it, I believe the line for it is a webcomic of romance, sarcasm, math, and language. So we have this right now, so that's pretty cool. That's I like that. You know, it's not professional looking by any means, but you know, we're getting some momentum going. And then what we're going to want to have is after this right now is the title, is we're going to have the title ad, because he's got, you know, books and other stuff coming on out. And so inside of here, we're going to do the div.title, or it's not title, div.add hyphen text is what I'm calling it here. So I have div inside of a div, and I think it goes, what if 2 additional serious scientific answers to, got that S there in the wrong spot, of course, to absurd hypothetical questions. Cool, so we have that, and then below that I'm gonna have some more text, and it's gonna say comes out 9/13, pre-order now. And it is his first one was a really fun book. I recommend picking that one up too. It's really wacky and it's a lot of fun. And if you hear thunder in the background, it is in fact thundering, so I do apologize for that. So then below here, what we're going to do is we're going to add another image in. This is going to be the what if picture itself. And then we're going to have what if book ad. So now it should look like this on your screen. It certainly does look on my screen, right? Because this is my screen. And what we're going to want to do here is add some styling to some things. So let's go ahead and start doing that. We're going to move into our CSS. And so it's always important to have, a separation or something that's delineating what your, regular CSS is, your mobile CSS. So we're going to have mobile styles here. We could do something wild like even this. Making it, extremely explicit, right? And then we could copy this, and then we could go down here for our tablet. I thought I selected the whole word there. Tablet. And then desktop. There's different ways of splitting up your CSS. You don't have to do it all in one file, but I'm doing it for just the purposes of this video. So now that I have everything kind of set to go, what are my base styles going to be? And there could be some rearranging that you find or some inconsistencies or stuff where you're like, I would have done it, a little bit differently, but that's fine. We have the title. And what I want to do with the title is generally change the font family, because when you're inspecting the original website using the developer tools, you can see what they use and you can mimic it. And if it's a font family that they didn't purchase specifically, you could just see if it's something you have available to you. And in fact, we do. So we have font family, and I believe it's this whole big thing out here is what they use. So we got this going on. So we have the font family matching. The next thing we want to do is change the font style in the title to italic. And then we're going to do a display of a flex. The flex direction is going to row, and it's by default row, but I like being explicit with what I'm doing. So that's why I go ahead and just say it's row. And for the align items, we're going to center it. And then for the background color, we're going to do white. And I just realized because my CSS is off menu, I'm skipping down a little bit right now, but that is fine. We'll be able to recover. And so we have the background color is white. And then our margin is auto, which is going to help us center and put everything in the middle. And then we're going to give a width of 95, so that way nothing kind of like runs up against the edges of the website itself. We're going to give it a border as well as 1 pixel, solid black, which is also a good debug feature. And then we're going to do a border radius of 5 pixels, so that way it kind of smooths out the edges, because sharp edges aren't super stylistic or fun to look at. And then we're going to do a margin top of 5 pixels. And so now you should have something that's, kind of like this, which is cool. Fine. Awesome. So what I do want to do is I realize that I scroll down a little bit on my CSS. So I'm going to come up here, not do that. Move that down because obviously I can't use Visual Studio Code very well. And since this is cascading, what I'm going to do is just do the margin 0 and then padding 0 right there. So that shouldn't change, things super drastically, but it allows me to control more of what's going on in the page explicitly. And so now I want to change the body. And first thing I want to do is the background color. And I want to give it that iconic blue color. And I'm just going to copy this off the screen because I hate typing hex code out. And then I want to do a max width of 720 pixels. Because if you remember from the actual website, even if I turn it sideways briefly here, it even on a phone turning it sideways, it doesn't spread all the way out. And so I know that there's, even though it's like a little bit thicker on this side here, there's like a max width, just the way it visually looks, right? I'm trying to duplicate it. So right now my styles look like this, and I'm still adding to them. And as I complete a section or a class, I'll bring it on over. So now that I have that max width set of 720 pixels, that would have confused me later on, right? Why are things getting wider than they should? I want to go to margin auto because I want to, have things kind of move towards the center. And then for our font awesome stuff, for the FA bars, what I want to do is make them larger because they're fine now, but I want to make them grow because I want them to be easy to use. And for the burger menu, because sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I'll add on an additional class. Like if I'm working with font size and it's, like font awesome or something, I have a, feeling built in it's going to be fine, it's going to survive. But sometimes, I don't know, if I'm doing something above and beyond, like I'm moving something, that's why I'll do, I don't know, I'll attach like burger menu or something like that as an additional class. So that way, I'm not, I don't know, in my mind, I'm not telling it something it wasn't meant to do. I don't know. That's the way my brain works. So we're doing a position relative. We're going to float it right. And you don't have to float it right. There's other ways you could do this for sure. And then margin right, we'll give it 10 pixels. And you should now have something like this right here. Now it's floating right. There's, there's some work that still needs to be done, but now this is right here. And yeah, it's not doing anything quite yet, right? Because we can't click on this right now, and this text needs to be bigger, but this is what we have so far. So good progress, I say. So now let's come back down below title, because what we should do is start at the top and work our way down. That's typically, I think, good CSS practice. And so we're going to come down now to the title ad itself. We're going to do a display of flex. Flex direction is row. And we're going to do a background color of white. And then what we want to do is do a margin of auto. Width of 95%. Do a border of 1 pixel solid black. We'll do the border radius as 5 pixels like we did above because we want, some smooth borders there. And let's see here. I think that's good enough, actually. So now it looks a little wonky. It's going to look like this right now. But this is close enough to where we're eventually going to head and go, because when we get to our straight up mobile styles, we're going to start switching some stuff out here. So after the title ad, what we want to do is come down and work on the ad text itself. So we're going to have a display of flex as well. The flex direction is column. And the gap is 10 pixels. So it still looks a little wonky, but, give it time, give it faith as these things go on. And then what I want to do is on the last child, I want to be able to make the font a little bit thicker. So I'm going to come down here, do text, and then I want to get the child of that, p dot, or colon, We'll do last child. We'll do the font weight is, let's just do 700. So now we have this comes out 9/13 pre-order now. So that's pretty cool. So let's come down into our mobile styles down here. And let's start doing some more specific things to our mobile view. Because this is, the beginning's kind of rough because you have to ask, like, what do I basically want? And then what do I want to do specifically on my mobile styles, right? And this is where you might switch one thing out for another, but after your mobile styles, I mean, it kind of all flows upward, right? So what I'm going to want to do is get my media query in here. So I think 320, I don't know if there's a mobile device on the market that works at 320 pixels. I forget what the smallest is. It's in the upper 300s, but I just went at 320. I just chose something very arbitrarily small here. So let's go back to the title. We're going to do a font size of 20 pixels, which is great. Let's come down and do a title add. Let's do the image. And we're doing max width of 155 pixels. So now this looks a lot better comparatively, right? We still have some magic to do here, but that's fine. So after this, the title add, what we're wanting to do next is go to the add text because we want to give it, I think, a little bit of breathing room. And we're going to give it a padding of 5 pixels. And it's not much. It's slightly noticeable, but now it's not everything's hugging up. It looks kind of nice. Yeah, there's this picture. It's kind of like got the black border, and the border around this makes it look a little bit thicker right here. There's some ways you could potentially deal with that, but I think it looks good enough for now for, a tutorial, right? So after that add text, we want to work on the actual menu. We're going to do a display block. Font size is going to be 20 pixels. And I just arbitrarily made these up. You may want to be more careful, talk to a designer, or, just experiment with it yourself. I'm just wanting to, just have fun with this. And that's all I want to do with my projects when I show them all to you is just have fun. So for my menu, I have display block. I have the font size of 20 pixels now and a margin left of 10. So then I want to come down and do a menu. And for my unordered list, I want to do list style type and do none. So that way I get rid of the dots or the bullets, I guess you would say. And then I want to drill down a little bit farther into the line items themselves. And I want to do a margin 20 pixels, 0 pixels. So I want to put 20 pixels on the top and the bottom of my menu here. And so this should give us a change here. And if we look, I actually grabbed the wrong piece of software there. We see that some of this stuff has not taken effect yet. And that says to me, we've named something wrong somewhere. So let's go back to our HTML and see why our changes have not taken place. And actually, I was getting a little bit ahead of myself because what I want to do is I want to come in here and do menu hide, display none. So now I have this. And so you're thinking, okay, I styled all this stuff here. Like what gives, man, right? And that is because now we have to go into our index.js. And when I click this, I want to change the class, but also apply these styles. And that's not that hard to do. It's just, I think, maybe 12, 13 lines of code. So now we have to come to the bottom here, or the bottom of this file here. And I want to do let me just do that to give a little more space. And then we're going to do index.js. So now that we're bringing that in, how is this going to look? So what we're going to do first is do const burger menu equals document dot get element by ID, and we're going to get that burger menu. And then we're going to get the menu content itself, and this is other stuff we're manipulating. Menu content, and we're doing another document dot get element by ID, and we're getting the menu ID itself. So then what we want to do is for the burger menu, where is the burger menu? It's this guy. It's this additional ID we put on here. It's our dashed line icon. We're going to do the burger menu. We're going to add an event listener, and we want it to be a click. And then we're going to give it this callback kind of function here. And what we want to do is make some more variables here. So the menu hide class. This is going to equal menu hide, which is what it currently is, which is why it's not displaying. But then we want to do the menu class itself, which equals menu, which is all the work we've done, which we haven't seen applied yet. So I'm just going to do a quick check. What's the current class name? And so I'm going to do menu content dot class list dot value equals menu hide class, and then menu content class list, and I'm going to replace it. And I'm going to take menu hide class, and I'm going to be replacing it with menu class. That's easy enough. And then we're going to have an else, so that way we could toggle it back and forth. And so all we're going to do here is take this and save it. And we're just going to flip these two around. So if it's one thing, it's going to be the other next time, vice versa. So let's go ahead and see if this actually works. So we're going to come into here and we're going to click this, and hopefully it should do what it wants. Bam. Now we see that margin having it shoved over. The font is bigger. Could I make this like white back here, kind of like this stuff here? Totally could. This was just an impromptu feature I added. If you want to style it beyond what I have, pull it down and work on it yourself. I mean, what's stopping you? You're here to learn, right? So that's the only JavaScript we're going to be doing for this, because there's not a ton else we need to do for now, which is super cool. So let's come back in here to the rest of the CSS above, because now we actually just did the header. So that's cool. We did a lot of that work. So now what we want to do is come on down and work on the actual comic itself, which is not a large section at all. We're going to do div.comic. And I'm going to give it this name here. And it's probably going to be more dynamic when you do it yourself, or you could always make it more dynamic. This one's called selection bias. And below that is an image. And then the source is going to be image. And for this one, what I'm going to use is the selection bias 2x there. I'm going to call this for the alt comic, and you always want to fill out the alt. That way people have screen readers, assisted, whatever it may be. It helps them see what's there. And if you're selling stuff, you want anyone and everyone to buy stuff. So always try and make your websites as user-friendly as possible, not just people that have their full, sense faculty. So then below this, I want a div, and then what I want is a comic nav. And there's a few ways of doing this, because what I want to do is now replicate this line right here. And let me turn it sideways so it's a little bit more noticeable. I want to replicate this, but I'm not going to put it above the comic because I don't think that's necessary. I'm just going to keep it down here, and it's going to look close-ish, right? So now that we have an idea of where we're going next, we have the comic. If we look over here, we have the comic. We have to change its, the image size and all that jazz, but it'll be okay. So we're going to come down into the comic nav here, and what we're going to want is a series of 5 buttons. So we're going to do button times 5. Oh yeah, remember, I hate that it does this. Like, that is just really bad formatting that it puts it all in one line like that for you. So we're going to come in and do that. And actually, I think, let me just go ahead and try this. I think it's less than. So let's just try that, less than, and then this one's going to be at GT for greater than. Actually, I think it's still the same on this side here. So we want a previous, or I think it's just a prev on the website. Random, because there's enough comics on the website to do random. And then we want to do next. So now that we have this is how it should look roughly right now. We got our work cut out for us, but it's not that hard, as you could see. Especially compared to, say, this right here. It's going to be close enough there. So let's go into our CSS and let's look right below where this stuff is, where our add text was, and we're going to go and work on the comic itself, or the comic section. So we want to do display flex. These are super handy. I probably didn't need to do the float and all that with the menu, but it's me doing this, so who cares? We're going to do a flex direction of a column. Our background color is going to be white. Margin is auto. Width, once again, is that 95%, because we kind of want to keep everything kind of in line, tightly together. And then a lot of this is going to be repetitive. So border 1 pixel, solid black. We're going to make the radius less sharp with the 5 pixels. We're going to give it a nice margin top of 5 pixels, not 50. That would be a little too much. And then we're going to do a text to line center. So now it should look a little like this, which is not, too terribly bad right here. It looks a lot better than it did before. So let's come and work on the comic navigation stuff. So we do comic dot nav. Oh, that's not what I wanted to type. Comic nav. And for everything that's a button, that's a child of it, is what that's saying. And so I'm going to copy this off the screen because it's another hex and I hate doing these things. And then we want to make the color, which is the text itself, FFF. The border is going to be 1.5 pixel solid. All right. Font size, because we want it to be readable, is going to be 16 pixels. Let's see what's next here. So we have the font weight, which is like how thick it is, right? Is going to be 600. And then we want to do a padding. And I'll do 1.5 pixels top and bottom. And then I'm going to do 12 pixels on the side to give it a little bit more width there. Once again, it won't be perfect. This is kind of an upgrade-ish from the existing product. But every iteration, I mean, you have to start with a minimum viable product, right? And then what I'm going to do here is copy and paste this stuff in, because there's a third thing I don't like typing out long ways, and that is some of this box shadow stuff, but I'm going to explain it. So you have your WebKit, you have your Mozilla box shadow. I think there's other stuff for Opera, so if it looks a little weird on other browsers, try to see if there's an equivalent for some of these WebKits and whatnot, because it may just be your browser you're having issues on. But we have the box shadows right here to give our font, or at least our buttons themselves, a little bit more of a shadow here. So this is just a way of doing that. So we have that done. And what we're going to do now is come in, and what we want to do with, I think all we wanted to do, at least I had written down, is in our comic nav for the button, we're going to do a padding of 2 pixels. So we should have something that looks a little bit like this right here. Now, if we wanted to do something that, you know, we shoved these out maybe a little bit more, you know, if we wanted to do a, I don't know, there's a say margin of, I don't know, let's do a 0 pixels on the top. Let's do, you know, 5 pixels left and right. And then I think this is 0 pixels on the bottom, if I remember right. You know, we could do something like this and add more space in here if we wanted to. Maybe 10 actually would look a little bit better. So now you at least have more space if you have gigantic fat thumbs. Once again, you could design this a little bit differently, but these are just ways you could play with this style in and of itself. Cool. So let me double check my stuff right here. And actually in the comic button itself, I think what I forgot to do is add the margin in here. So we're going to come up to the top and we're going to give it a let's see here, 0 and then 4 pixels right there. So that's pretty sweet. And so that looks good. That looks a lot better. But one thing I did forget to do, because this is a tutorial and you're seeing me make mistakes live, is I actually forgot to do the comic nav itself. And this happens when you do, you know, more complex tutorials. You skip around, you try to do things in an order, and then you kind of forget where your place is. So we're going to do display flex here. We do a flex direction of row, and we saw that it looked pretty okay before. We may have to undo the styles that we added, but that's fine. So we're going to justify the content. We're going to space this evenly. And then we'll do a margin top of 10 pixels. And we'll do a padding bottom here of 10 pixels. So what I want to do now is look down here where we added the padding right here, or the margin I should say, and remove it. And it actually looks close because the other styles are overriding enough. But now we have this. This looks pretty okay. Yeah, these buttons are a bit smaller. You know, it looks kind of weird. But once again, this is a clone of a pretty interesting website. So do with it what you want. The next thing that we want to look at and move on to, though, is the mega footer, as it is called. At least I call it the mega footer, because if we look at the original website, bringing it on in, I consider all this the footer. It's not like a traditional looking footer, but it definitely serves as one. So if we, undo that, I mean, this is the feed, the other comics, other things. This is like exiting details, right? But your header, navigation, main content, and this is just other stuff. So I'm treating this as one giant footer right here. So it's going to look a little weird, but whatever. That's just the way it is. So we're going to come back to our website here. I'm going to bring this off screen. And I might be doing some copying and pasting here for some of the stuff, just as a forewarning, but we're going to have a div, and then we're going to have our mega footer. So now that we have that, we want to bring in an image at the top, and we're going to do image, and then we're going to go to grouped images, call this XKCD, comic images, and then we're going to put another one right below it. So I'm just going to copy and paste this because I'm lazy. And I know the other name of the file is _2, and I'm just going to put down more XKCD images right here. And if we go in, we could see that we have some images, but this one is broken, and that's kind of sad down below. So let's see what we did wrong there. And it's because I actually I'm a goof, and I named this wrong. Let me come back in image. So we have the grouped images. Oh. And let's come in and take this, add more to it. Man, I'm just full of typos. One thing, if you're a young budding web engineer or something like that, typos are just going to be everywhere. You can be showing someone, here we go. Here's the images. You're going to be showing someone, you'll have like 40 billion years of experience, and you'll still be dropping the F-bomb in front of them because you have like a gazillion typos. So now we have this right here, and we actually somehow accidentally deleted the closing footer. And never be afraid to tell a senior dev that they accidentally blew something away. They'll respect you a lot for that because no one's perfect. So right below these images, I want to do a div dot, and then let's do a thing called a feed. And I'm just going to copy and paste this on over because it's just, saving time. It's just paragraph text. So now we have the RSS feed, the Atom feed, and then the email right in here. So that's cool. And then there's that other comics that they enjoy. And so this is going to be outside of the feed here, but still within the mega footer. So we're going to do dot other comics. And it's an H5, I believe I used. And then comics I enjoy. So as a sibling next to that, I'm going to copy and paste this in for just time's sake, because it's just a lot of typing. And, you have 3-word phrase, comics, junior scientist power hour. These are just, and I'm not linking to any of them. You could actually, as a supplement to this, if you wanted to take this and make it fully functional, add the links in here yourself, style them, totally feel free to. So then we have the other comics. We're still in the mega footer. And then what we want to do next is have the, I believe I called it the best viewed section here. And this is how they want you to view it. And once again, I'm going to copy and paste this because it's just text. It says XKCD.com is best viewed with Netscape Navigator 4.0. Pentium. Yeah, if hopefully you're laughing at this, or hopefully at some point in your life, you grow fondly for Netscape Navigator. I remember using it, and it was magical. So after the best viewed, we're going to come down into the license. And I'm going to copy and paste this as well, and I'm going to explain it because there's a little bit of nuance here. Nothing big, though. And we see that there's some spans here, and that's because we're going to want to change some stuff up. Because if we look here, we see more details. It's like normal text, and then something happens and it becomes a link. We're not adding the links in, but we are going to alter how this text looks. And so that's why there's a span inside of the paragraph tag itself here. So since we don't need our JavaScript anymore, we could just get rid of that. And let's look at what we have so far before we style it. This is pretty much it. We just have to style this out, and then we're done with the mobile viewing, which is pretty cool. So now that we're in our styles here, we're going to want to come down, and our mega footer is going to take a little bit of love. But let's do our mega footer. I'm going to do a display of flex. Flex direction is going to be a column because it's very column looking kind of flow, right? It's not left to right, it's top to bottom. Background color is going to be white. The margin is going to be auto. The width is going to be 95 pixels, or 95%, I should say. Border is 1 pixel, solid black. Border radius, once again, 5 pixels. And then the margin top, let's do 5 pixels. So how does this overall change things? Let's bring it on in. And it's okay. You know, it's nothing to write home about. So then let's work on the images next. So we have the mega footer, and then anything that's an image below. Let's go ahead and start working on that. We're going to do a padding top of 5 pixels. We're going to display as a block because we want it to take up the whole, row that it's on, visually and logically in the website itself. And then we want a width of 95% and a margin auto. So now it looks like this right here. Not too shabby. Let me bring this up. And this is where I started taking more of a license to do stuff. I mean, you could see that mine is much more mobile friendly ready than the original website. But I mean, not every site you do, and you may get jobs as web developers to make sites like this more, mobile friendly, which is fine. So, you don't always, when you clone something, have to do it 1000%. Otherwise you suck. There could be, licenses to change things. I mean, websites and companies do it all the time themselves. So now that we're done with that image, we want to then go to the feed. We're going to display flex because you could have flex containers and stuff within flex containers. It's perfectly normal. You just have to know how it's structured. And then we're going to justify the content, or not justify self, the content to the center. We're doing margin top. That's not what I wanted my autocorrect to do. Of 5 pixels. And then for our paragraph text in the feed, and we're going to do the nth child, and what we want to do is odd. I'm going to copy this in because you guessed it, it's hex. And then for the text decoration, I'm going to do none. Font weight, we're going to give it 800. And then the padding, we're going to do 0 on the top and bottom, but the left and right, we're going to give 10 pixels. So now we have this. Could be a little bit larger, redesign it. But looking at this, let's try zooming in. 125%. It looks close-ish. It's good enough for now, right? So now let's go down to the comics section, the other comics that he is an artist enjoys. So other comics. We're going to do a text align center because center text typically is well received. Do a margin top. Let's do 40 pixels there. And let's come down to the comics list. Actually, you know what? This is, yeah. So we move that up there, and we're going to change the font and stuff later because that's going to change later on. So basically, we just moved this away. That's pretty much it. So now that we're done with the other comics, we want to come down to the comics list itself. And so we want to do a width of 40%. We're going to do a padding of 5 pixels. I'm going to copy and paste this color in for the font because it's annoying to type, which is 96A8C8. And then I'm going to do a font weight of 800. So now that that's done, I'm going to bring this on over. And now it looks like this. Not good, not bad, but we're going to style it up in our mobile view in just a moment. So now the comics list appears to be done here. We want to go into the other things class that we have. So we're going to do a text align center. We're going to do a display of flex. The flex direction is going to be column. Most of the time they are on your mobile views, your handheld devices. I'm going to align the items to the center. And then the margin is 40 pixels on the top and bottom, and then 0 on the left and right there. I'll just do that. So that's in general what I want to do with it, but there's specific things on the inside, like the other things, and then the H5 on the inside. We want to text align the center. And then for the paragraph text itself, I'm going to take that. We give it a padding of 5 pixels all the way around. I'm going to take and copy paste this again. The color. And we're going to give it a font weight of 800. So now we have something like this from our other things section here. It looks okay, I guess, but as I scroll down here, we have our best viewed. And you know what? I'm an idiot. I was wondering where it was. So I was like, where are the changes at? I forgot a section in my HTML. So because these things happen, they're easy to fix. I'm going to come into here and I'm going to do other things. Once again, this happens quite frequently. And what I'm going to do is copy and paste from my other screen because it's just a few minor things. And so now I have an H5 other things up here, tips on technology and government, climate FAQ, and Catherine Hey Ho. I haven't clicked on any of these links on the original website. This is just a replica. But if you're not an idiot like me, and you have this, you had it previously, right before your best viewed section here, right? You're now, your site should look like this, other things right here, which is great. Once again, all just another day at the office right here. And so now we want to go to the next section and we want to do the best viewed. And so we're going to make this style here for best viewed. We'll do a width of 90%. Then we do a margin of auto. And already we're seeing the best viewed is starting to be centered right here, which is very nice. And then we're going to focus on the specific paragraph text there for best viewed. And we're going to give that a font weight of 900. Text align of center. And do a margin of auto. To kind of just, I think, just bring that in there. So the best viewed, and now we have this nicely going on right here. Once again, it's not as tiny as it is on the original website, but I wanted to, make it more readable, more user-friendly. So I believe our last section is the license. And then we do a margin top, 40 pixels. Do a text align center. And that's it for that section there. But we still want to manipulate stuff within it. So we're going to do dot license. And then this is where that span gets interesting. We have the paragraph, but then we have the spans inside of the paragraph. Because if we look, how does this make sense? You have license, which is the class. You have this, but this is a, inside of the paragraph, parent here. So that's how we're targeting it. And what we want to do with that is, I think I did like width 40% here. Some of this is just me eyeballing it and having fun per usual. I'm going to copy the color. And you can use CSS variables. I've yet to make that a regular habit. But if you're typing a lot of this out over and over again, you might just want to do CSS variables. Font weight 800. And because I want to do this in a nice order, I'm going to do license P. Margin top. Let's do 10 pixels. Bringing this on over, we have this now. And it looks pretty good. If we look at our actual website here, it's not identical because, we've changed some things, right? But getting out of here, we have this. And we have, this section right here. Not super identical, but close enough, and it's respectable. So that's it for our regular styles. So let's actually, now that I realized I did this right, what I should do is for everything, and this is me being a goof right here. I was actually typing inside of my handheld mobile views, right? So how do I go back and how do I change this? How do I know that I, made this mistake. And so one easy way of doing this is if you do this yourself, because it's easy to get lost and it's good to show these mistakes, right? I'm not perfect. Is to go to the last thing I was working on, which was this comic nav. And I could see that this is the last thing I was caring about on my mobile view because I have my code on the other screen. So what I want to do is take my mega footer and I want to scroll all the way down here and I'm going to do Control X. I'm going to lift that out and I'm going to come down below my comic nav button here and I want to drop all those styles I had right on in. So here they go. So now if I come on up here, and this is just a check for me, is I have my comic nav. And then what I want to have right below that, let me make sure, let me refresh my other screen here. So everything looks good. Sorry for that funny edit right there, but I had to make sure everything looked good. One thing that is a little odd is that, yes, the mega footer stuff is kind of inverted right now because of the error I just made. It was just writing my CSS in the wrong section here, but my code online will be 100% correct. So I do apologize for that slightly here. But now that we are on track and we have our mobile styles correct here, what we should look at now is the tablet styles, because now we're ready to move on there. And as you do your CSS and move on up, a lot of your base stuff is going to be mobile and your base styles. So if we start here, this is going to be, it's going to cascade throughout. But when you get to your mobile styles, since I'm doing min width, this starts at 320 and works its way up. So whatever rules that I define here will impact larger screen sizes, which means, at least in my opinion, less CSS I have to write. So if I come in here for the tablet, all I have to do is come in. And so now I have a min width of like about 768 pixels. And so what I'm going to do is off screen, switch it to like an iPad. And so what I want to do is change my font, and I want to have a font size, and this is arbitrary values right here, of 22 pixels. I want to change my H5. I want to update this to font size, what did I decide? 27 pixels. And then for my title ad and the image, I want to do a max width of 155 pixels. And for the comic nav and the button itself, because I want to make the buttons and all that stuff more legible, I have more real estate to work with. I want to do a font size of 20 pixels. And for the title itself, I want to come in and update the font size as well. But I also want to align item center and give it a width of 90%. So now, if I bring this over, could this be smoothed out a little bit more? I wanted to give this some nice room right here. I wanted to, there's some other design things I could have done here to make this a little bit more, I guess, sexy looking, right? But in general, this is a bit more, readable right here. So let me go ahead and click this, and it still works, right? This kind of centers itself out more. That's something that could be smoothed out, looked at maybe a little bit later on by you, by me, whoever, right? But now we have all of this in here, which looks okay. Maybe we could change the font to make it a little bit bigger in our menu section itself, but that's not something I'm crying or worrying about right now, since this is a first, iteration of a website, right? You're going to nail most of it, but not all of it. So one thing I noticed is that, once again, this does happen in your CSS. When I was looking at the comics list, and I've looked at this a few times, I'm like, this looks off. And now we're on our tablet view here. And I was looking at my styles, and it looks like there was another section where I forgot some CSS. Have I written it? Yes. So let's go ahead and insert this in the right area. And we are actually above, I want to show you, above the mobile styles. So I have the other comics, I have the comics list right here. And so I want to come in and I want to just do the comics list itself. I'm going to do a display flex. I'm going to do a flex direction of row. I want to flex wrap because I want it to wrap around. And I want to justify the content, and I want to space around. And so now I want to take this other comics right here. And what I want to do is I want to move this below, because I kind of want to start reordering some of this stuff, because this looks okay for now. So sorry for that funny edit right there. I had to tend to something really quick, but we have the comics I enjoy right here. We have the flex wrap, because I think I just had wrap earlier, or flex. I think I screwed that one up. And so I have the flex wrap. So now you kind of have this columnar, multi-column kind of setup right here, which is fine. You could also use a grid for this if you wanted to as well. I decided to go with a flex and just have it, wrap around right here. So coming back down to the tablet styles, it seems that we are done here. Let me come back to the iPad because I switched out there briefly. And this looks okay. It looks pretty good. There's some improvements that we can make, but once again, you always got to have a minimum viable product. You can't wait for perfection. So the next thing we're going to do is work on the laptop. And this is already looking okay-ish, but there's a lot of things we can do to make it look even better. And so we're going to come in here. And we're going to do a media query of 992 pixels and above. And this is going to get interesting because I'm going to start using a grid now for the header. So I'm going to do a display. I'm going to use a grid. And I use flex way more than I do grids, but they're equally, I don't want to say equally powerful. They're for different things, but grids are extremely powerful. And so what I want to do is I want to do a grid. Let's see, a template, columns. And I want to do 20% auto. And then I want to do a grid template for my rows. And I want that to be auto for the space that they're taking up there. And this is kind of the cool thing about grid. I have a grid template areas. And this is, I think, what is insanely dope about all this stuff. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to have a single thing right here. I'm going to have a menu, title. I'm going to come down and I'm going to do a menu, add. And these are placeholder names in basically the space I'm giving it. So later I could assign menu to some of my CSS elements. And for everything that has a menu placeholder, it will take up, this amount of given space within the grid. And that's maybe kind of hard to visualize right now, but you'll see it in play in just a moment. And then I also want to have a gap of 5 pixels because I do want some breathing room between everything. So right now it looks like this, and it looks, pretty terrible. But let's go ahead and work on this thing right here. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to do dot menu icon and then dot burger menu. I'm going to do a display of none. So this looks a lot better than it did before, but it still needs a little bit of love. Don't worry, we will get there. And then so for our menu, what I'm going to do is target the ID. And then what I want to do is a display. Let's see, let's do a block. Background color is going to be white. And it's a lot of the stuff that we did with the JavaScript, but since we have more room now, I'm just going to explicitly lay it out. Once again, the border radius is going to be 5 pixels. The text align is going to be center. And this is where we're going to put our grid area. Where is the menu going? It's going to go to the menu. I'm going to give it a margin top of 5 pixels and a width of 100%. And so we're not done with that yet. So we got to come into here and get our menu. To our UL. We're going to do a list style. Type is going to be none. And our font weight is going to be 700. And so then we're going to go into our line items here. And we want to do a padding of one pixel. So it's starting to slowly a little bit come together here, but we still have a little bit of massaging to do. And I wouldn't worry too much about that yet, because what we're going to do next is below the menu itself, what we're going to do is work on the title. And so we'll do a margin top of 5 pixels. We do a grid area of title. And then we're going to do a width of 100%. If I could type correctly here. And then for our title add, we'll do a grid area of add and a width of 100%. And then one thing I need to do right here at the bottom is for the header, the comic, and I'm just going to finish this off right here to make a footer. We have a width of 100%. And sorry for that one weird edit right there. What I realized is that it was autocorrect. It was like grid template area, whatever it was, and I had to change it back to grid menu. So now what our website should look like is this right here. And this is how you make a responsive XKCD website for all different kinds of mobile views. If you like what you see, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.